Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us for another Armchair Traveler series. My name is Brandon Wilkes. I am the Education Coordinator at the Haynes Public Library. I really appreciate Russ White and Cindy Buxton for continuing to put this on. I've gotten a lot out of it. Hopefully everyone else has too. If anyone ever has any ideas for programs that they like to help, like to host at the library, please get in contact with me, call the library, and I'll help facilitate that. Everyone is muted as they come into the room, so please keep that on mute until the question and answer at the end of the program. And with that, I will kick it over to Russ for the bio. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Russ White. My wife Cindy and I have been organizing these Armchair Traveler series this spring. We did it last spring as well. We have 2 more scheduled after this one. Next week, it'll be student Lily Ramsey will be giving a talk. That's Wednesday, 7 p.m. next Wednesday on Zoom. That will be the Ramsey Road School about homeschooling on the road this year with her family. They visited numerous national and state parks along the way that she will be telling us about. Then our last talk the week after that will be by photographer extraordinaire Dina Selby. She will be telling us about her trip to Costa Rica a few years ago. And that talk will be on April 21st. Tonight's talk is about Ethiopia. And when Cindy started these talks, she had in mind that the talk she had in mind when she started the whole series was the talk that Debra gave in 2019 about Ethiopia. She asked Debra to repeat this talk, and Debra has added new slides and new pictures. So you probably all know Debra Schnabel. She's lived here forever.
Forever, yes.
And she's a former businesswoman in Haynes, and she likes collecting rocks. She likes backpacking. She likes traveling to Ethiopia and Africa, other places in Africa. And then joining Debra via Zoom is Sharon, who is an avid hiker, backpacker, and loves to travel to Africa. And she has lived in Haynes many years. And before retiring, was a teacher in various places around Alaska, and also a journalist. And she's a sun worshiper and now spends part of the winter near Joshua Tree. And I just found out tonight that Sharon and Debra met while they were both working for the Lynn Canal News.
Oh, I didn't work for it. I just stuck my head in the room.
Oh, okay.
She would come and bring.
They met being involved with the Lynn Canal News. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So without further ado, here's Debra.
All right, thank
And I'm going
you.
to stick around for
To make sure I
technical
know.
support for a minute here. You want to be able to see your notes here. So you shrink that up.
All the way. So that I can read them.
Right.
Okay, just get
Fine.
rid of that.
Put it over here. That work?
Well,
You need to
then
see what's
I'd
coming
I'd
next?
like to, but I guess it doesn't matter that much. Okay.
There.
All right. Thank you very much, Russ. Okay, and I will take over the controls, I think. Sharon and I traveled together to Ethiopia in 2018. And I'm trying now to find there we are, the cursor. Ethiopia here on the political map, the country of Ethiopia. You can see it's landlocked, which is always a disadvantage for countries, but Ethiopia, as you can see in the geopolitical map, sorry, that's very sensitive. I'm sorry.
Just avoid the
Okay,
bottom.
well, I'll just talk about the geopolitical map there in the upper corner. As you can see, it's a very diverse country. The Great Rift Valley, which we'll see more of that, runs through the country of Ethiopia, kind of dividing the country into two parts. You can see the Rift Valley much more clearly in the entire picture of Africa there. Ethiopia is labeled the Horn of Africa because if you see right there, the jag of land beneath the Red Sea there protruding out under south of the Arabian Peninsula, that is the Horn of Africa, which is actually Somalia, but for some reason, Ethiopia is the one that is named that. We traveled during the dry season, which was between October and March. The temperature was between 65 and 80 degrees. It was very comfortable for us. We did not travel anywhere except within Ethiopia. Okay, got this. Oops, I'm sorry. Where is the, what is it? What is the, yeah, that's the space bar. Okay, space bar. All right, tonight's journey that we are going, we've divided the information up into different categories, much like a book. So we're going to look first at geography and places, then modern history and politics, economics and infrastructure, and then people and culture. This picture here, of course, and most of you that travel will recognize that as the screen on the back of the airline couch chair, the little TV screen that tracks the journey. We flew over the Mediterranean, over Egypt, over Sudan, and we ended up in Addis Ababa. Ethiopia, our travels started in Addis Ababa, that's the Oromo region. And then we traveled northwest through the Amhara region, that's in the more golden part there, traveling north in that direction to that Lake Tana, which is the start of the Nile River. And then up into Tigray, which is the upper part, the darker brownish area. From there, we then backtracked down into Oromia, which is south of Addis Ababa, but not very far into that area. I wouldn't say that we traveled into eastern Ethiopia. And then we did travel over to the, we didn't go into Afar, but we went into the area we see traveled there by the train onto the extreme east part of Ethiopia into Harar. If we had gone any further, we would have ended up in Somaliland. Okay. Okay, dead center, Addis Ababa. And just so you know, in the Ethiopian language, there's no accents on any syllables, so everything is equalized, Addis Ababa, Addis Ababa. Anyway, it's dead center in Ethiopia. It's a booming city. In 2018, when this picture was taken, you can see that there was a lot of construction ongoing. It is a city that was founded only in 1886. It's not a very old city. It was built because there were some warm springs there. The population is estimated at 3.5 million of Addis Ababa, and Ethiopia itself is about 109 million. One of my favorite slides, this is on the very first day that we walked out of the very first place that we stayed in Addis Ababa. There was a stationery and computer store called Alaska. It just captured me. A private sedan is not a very common thing in Addis Ababa or anywhere in Ethiopia. Taxis are highly regulated and most travel around by minibus, and the streets, interestingly, do have names to them, but when you travel, you just get in the vehicle, whatever it is, and when you get to where you want to go, you just call it out, the destination that you want to get off. So there's really not a lot of knowledge about addresses. Here's 3 scenes from Addis Ababa. They say that repairs are never complete in Addis Ababa. That's why the first slide there on the extreme right is just an old water line that got built and then repaired and never fully repaired. The middle is a street scene in Addis Ababa. There's construction ongoing, and the man on the top of that pole is actually a lineman pulling an electrical wire. He's doing his work. He's a working man that's installing electricity in Ethiopia. I thought that was pretty unique. That's Mekelle Square on the extreme left there. Wait, I'm backwards, aren't I? That's on the right. Yeah,
no, it's on the left. It's on the left. It's on the
oh,
left.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay. Sharing keeps me straight. So that's a major gathering place in Addis Ababa, very modern. We'll see more pictures of this area as time goes
And
by.
it's also the place where several years ago, someone tried to assassinate Abe, their leader, not too long before we went there.
Okay, after we traveled out of Addis Ababa, we came traveling in a northwest direction into what's known as the Amhara region. I'm really sorry we did not get any pictures of traveling out of Addis Ababa. It was extremely hilly, very up and down hilly. I got car sick coming out of Addis Ababa, but once over the hills, here we were in this beautiful pastoral country, cattle country. Traveling into the Blue Nile Valley. This was one of the reasons that I wanted to go to Ethiopia. I wanted to see the headwaters of the Blue Nile River. And we are right now, these three photos are all in the Blue Nile Valley on their way to, we're actually traveling through the valley to go to the source, which is Lake Tana. So we're traveling northward as the river is flowing southward. There's the African Queen that takes us across the river to view the Blue Nile Falls. These falls, of course, are very, very famous. They were first discovered by, I think, Portuguese or the Jesuits that were traveling through Ethiopia in the 1600s, first recorded finding these falls. That was in 1600, and then Scottish explorers in the 1800s came upon them again. Continuing on in the Amhara area, as you can see, this is kind of flowing agricultural land with cattle. Teff, barley, and wheat are the crops that are grown. And as we climb, you can see where the ground gets increasingly more rugged, and you can see that every patch of ground that we couldn't even imagine thinking about trying to grow something on is put into production. We get to Gondor. This was the capital of Ethiopia from 1650 to 1880. We happened to be there on a day when there was something happening. I can't really recall what it was that made all of these people gathered there. Can you recall that, Sharon?
It had something to do with religion, as most things in Ethiopia do.
Right. Okay, so the Gondor is a very, it's a highly intellectual demographic there. There is universities are in Gondor. It's a very vibrant city up until the 1900s, then lost its vibrancy there. The Simeon Mountains, this is continuing north again. This is north of the Lake Tana. Incredible scenery. We are high on a cliff. I just want to make sure that you get the full impression here. Look straight down. All those little dots down there are places, they're buildings where people are living. The ground, as you can see, is patchworked where people are growing barley and wheat. It's unbelievable. You can't take a picture in Ethiopia without a human being in it somewhere. It seems like there are just people everywhere, even in these lands that look almost uninhabitable. In the Simeon Mountains, that's a waterfall that, that's where tourists go, to that waterfall. Lots of those monkeys, which Sharon loves. And she'll speak
They're
to
called gelada, if I'm saying it correctly, and that's the only place they live. And when we arrived here, our guide Lungo really didn't think we were capable of doing this. I mean, he was insisting that maybe he should just drive us to a road through here rather than letting us trek for 2 days, but we convinced him that we could do it. I think I showed him a photo of me up at the pass, up at the Chilkat Pass with a backpack on.
So I think that it's probably time that we tell our audience right now that before we started, each of us had a list of 3 things that we wanted to do while we were in Ethiopia. And one of Sharon's was hiking. So that was one of the reasons, that was a reason why we went to the Simeon Mountains. Do you remember the other 2 reasons that you wanted to go to Ethiopia, Sharon?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I remember your reasons.
Yes, I wanted to see where Haile Selassie was buried. and I wanted to see where the Queen of Sheba lived. So
And
as
the
we know,
Blue
she was-
Nile, and the Blue Nile.
and,
Falls.
and the source of the Blue Nile Falls, right. So here we are at 9,000 feet, just before going to bed. We camped out here. We were with a group. I mean, I shouldn't say we traveled with our own, just Sharon and me and our guides. But when we got into the Simeon Mountains, there are specified places where you have to stay. And this was one of those places. Also in the Amhara region, this is southeast of the mountains, is the town of Lalibela. You can see that this is a different rock structure here, plateaus, as opposed to the sharp peaks. And this is the area around Lalibela. The rock is basaltic, so there's a lot of carving. This is the area where we have the rock-hewn churches. We're going to see a lot more of them later. Actually, it's a basaltic bedrock, but the deposits that you see, our guide there is walking along these cliffs that built along basalt scoria, altered basalt scoria. Do you know about that, Russ? Russ knows about that. Cool. Okay, continuing on north into the Oxium area.
Deborah, are we going to
Yeah.
talk any more of, see, I'm more interested in the people than the landscape. Are we going to talk any more about the guy, about Mogus there or not?
Well, we have the section called
Oh,
People and Culture,
okay,
that have
okay.
pictures of all of our guides. I'm
Okay.
sorry that I thought you had gone through the
I
show.
have, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But you said I could say anything anytime, so I,
Okay, yes, we will talk to the people.
okay.
About the people. Okay, but right now we're in the geography area. Just more of the geography. The mountain there that is under the clouds, in the clouds, is the tallest peak in Ethiopia. It's called Ras Dashen, and it's the highest peak at 15,930 feet. Okay, so we're traveling along a road, this whole area from Gondor up into Axum, this whole area. We're traveling on a road that was built by the Italians in the early 20th century. Ethiopia was a colony, or presumed colony, of Italy. Anyways, just gorgeous, gorgeous to me. We finally get to Axum. Now we are in the Tigrian area now, Tigray. These are just shots. Those obelisks, they call them stelia. They date back to the 1300s. They're unique to Ethiopia. Nobody has any explanation as to why they were built. One of them was moved to Italy, but later on, like maybe 50, 100 years later, Ethiopians went back to Italy and said, we want it back. It was returned to Ethiopia. And these are the only obelisks that are in Ethiopia, and they are all right there. You can see that they're being supported by some extra construction there. Came across this little cinema. I just thought it was pretty cool. It was owned by an expatriate living in Seattle, which is why it's called the Seattle Cinema. On the lower corner there, that is a picture of a library, and that library was built with money that was sent to the city of Axum from expatriates that are living in the United States. And a lot of that happens, that expatriates will work in America or anywhere and then send money back to their originating communities to build up. Airport, that we're at the airport facility down here, and I want to just point out those odd, it looks like an odd shaped tower things, or vacant architectural designs there on that building. Those are the design that is identified with the Axum, the Tigrian people. So people on like tombstones and on geography and architecture, you'll see that it's kind of like an insignia that designates the source and where it's from. I made it to where they say that Queen of Sheba lived. It's in Tigray, and that was her bath. doesn't look like anything more than a swimming pool to me, but anyway, apparently I'm standing in her shower with my guide there, and that was just a walkway. So yeah, the Queen of Sheba, which at the time, that was when Ethiopia was known as Abyssinia, and apparently the Queen of Sheba was having an affair with the King Solomon, and they had the children, the son named Mekali, and that's where all the people come from that are in the lineage of the royalty, apparently. We did not go too afar, and you can probably see why. It looked pretty dangerous. Okay.
And there have been several murders there recently, right before we got there too, of killing of tourists.
Right, German tourists. I want to point that out.
But that time around, but other
Okay.
German. Yeah.
So if you recall the map, and I pointed out that large, the area which was the beginning of the Rift Valley, this is that area. It's one of the lowest spots on the earth that people can still walk around on, 200 feet below sea level. It's the convergence of 3 tectonic plates. It's very volcanic, it's sulfuric, but the Afar people have learned somehow to live there, and they have mined and exported salt for centuries. They are responsible for the distribution of salt through all of North and Central Africa, and probably into Europe too. But they have learned to live with this kind of landscape. The Rift Valley, other than that low depression, which is volcanic, this is the Rift Valley in the western part of Ethiopia. It runs 6,000 miles from Lebanon to Mozambique. And as you saw in the map, it slices through East Africa and a northeast southwest line. It's just, the earth sinking between parallel fault lines. And the process of tectonic plates, falling below or themselves, I guess it's called rifting. And it's still in progress there in what's called the Dankel Depression, which is what we saw just earlier. But right now, this part of the valley is not as active, and it's being cultivated as wine. It's Ethiopia's wine country, and Sharon is a fan of that housing type.
I'm a fan of different types of housing. We were on the train now, and I took photos of that house along with others.
That is a house.
Yes.
Okay, and then on the very far side of Ethiopia, Harar, that was the commercial center of Mideast trade, trade coming down the the Red Sea, across from the Arabian Peninsula, up from southern Africa, and across. Harar was a huge commercial center of Mideast trade. And
for any of you who are poets, that's where Arthur Rimbaud hung out for many years. We even went to his house.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a picture of that. It's a walled city. Those are our guides down there at the bottom, Joseph and Naud. Children just running through the wall there. And then this was on the far right there, just a street scene. It's, as you can see, it's not as developed as Addis Ababa. It still has dirt streets.
And it also has 88 mosques in it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. And then here's the Oromo region. This is south of Addis Ababa. We did not, penetrate that area too much or very much, just as far as we went. It's more agricultural. It's and it's also a lot more, it's less developed. It's where a lot of tourists that are looking for a more cultural or traditional indigenous experience, or a lot more animals. It's where you find a lot more birds and animals and things like that, more park-like, I suppose. There are parks in this area too. Oh, I should also say, it's also the apparent area of King Solomon's mine. I think nobody, as far as I know, nobody's really identified King Solomon's mines yet, but it's presumed it might be in the southern part of Ethiopia. Okay, we're going to move on to the modern history and politics. And the reason I have this map up there is to just show you how, I mean, the most essential human relationship, I think we're coming to know this more than ever, is tribal. And even though there's about 11 cultural regions in Ethiopia, as you can see from the different colors, there's over 80 tribes with identifiable languages and customs in those tribes. So Ethiopia's history has been the history of constant war before biblical times even. So it was just a real, how would you say, the history of Ethiopia has been an eternal attempt to unify the tribes into a country that can produce and be productive for its citizens. The reason that I put this picture up is because this is where many of the battles, most of the battles were for Ethiopia, whether they're with Europeans or within tribal areas, whatever, they take place in country like this. This is the area between Tigray and Amhara. We've seen pictures of the Simeon Mountains, but I mean, and the most recent civil war also was fought in this area. That I mean, here in 2021 and 22, and we're hearing about battles in Ethiopia. This is where they're taking place. I mean, it's unbelievable. So these are three of the emperors that that were important to Ethiopia's unifying history. The Emperor Tewodros, some call him Theodore or Ted, that was in the 1860s. Menelik, with the lions there, he was 1889 to 1913, and then Haile Selassie from 1930 to 1974. These are the three areas of Ethiopia history that were relatively peaceful. It was recognized that there was stability in the reign of each of these three different men. Between that, there were times of skirmishes, tribal wars, genocide, and like a couple of reigns of princes, and sometimes even there was a princess that was reigning one time. This was just one of my goals, to see where Haile Selassie's body was. That's his bed that he slept in. And then to this over there to the left is the tomb, and you can see the shape at the top there, as I pointed out before, when we were in the airport in Axiom. This is an indication of his tribal roots. And that man there, can you remember? I think he just took the money, right?
He just befriended us. We really didn't know what we were doing, because the place where this was this big open space. It was rather dark, and he just came and helped us and explained things as best he could. Because the wife's tomb is right beside it too, isn't it? He's standing between Haile Selassie and his wife. Yeah.
Okay. During the time that we were there was a time when Abe had just kind of, I think that they had just had the elections and Abe had been brought to power. Haile Selassie was overthrown by a Marxist regime. I mean, as Sharon and I were talking about this earlier, Haile Selassie, he was of course adored, a wonderful leader, but power corrupts, it always does, and even good people can become kind of sour on their power. So anyway, that's a painting that I found showing the elimination of the intellectual class in 1974, which it's hard for me. It's within my lifetime. I had no idea this was happening, but the Marxist regime in Ethiopia murdered hundreds of thousands of intellectuals, pretty much killed the entire intellectual class off. Their mass graves martyrdom. So,
And people were afraid to wear glasses because that was kind of like a sign that,
right,
that you did read. So
right. So you didn't want to wear your glasses. So it's been after the overthrow and after the demise of the Marxist class, which I'm sorry, the regime, which I'm sorry, I don't have a big history on that, but we've had 3 decades of corrupted government dominated by Tigrerian politics. And what I mean by that is they're recognized as being in power. It's a government that's run pretty much on nepotism, on bribery, and just on bullying people. But Abe, who was an Oromian, was elected in 2019, and we were there in 2018. So he was probably not yet elected, but we saw many street parades. People were excited for the unification of the country, and they thought democracy was underway, and the country had a real feeling of hope.
but remember, Lungo wasn't excited, our guide. He said, it's not going to change anything. And he apparently was correct.
Well, I don't know. That's why I put this question there. Abe, he could be the 4th unifier. He came to power by a democratic election. If you recall, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize because soon after his election, he came to terms with Eritrea, the country that is basically the shoreline or the coastline of Eastern Ethiopia. He announced a new era of politics where he freed many of the jailed dissidents that the previous government had created. He allowed dissenting factions to participate in government. And some people say that was really what well, it's not a downfall yet. Oops, what was that? How do I go back? Thank you. So one of the things I read about, and Sharon can speak more to this because she's been speaking and writing to some of the people that we met there, but in an article I read, Abe, there was supposed to be an election, and Abe disallowed the election because of the pandemic. It was scheduled for November 2020. And he said, no, we can't afford to, allow an election of the people right now because, that's bringing people out onto the streets, into ballot, into public. So turmoil has ensued since then because it caused a weakness or a breach in the tempo of government, and the Tigrayan people that were overcome by the democratic election have been able to squeak through, I guess, and retain some hold of power. So go ahead, Sharon, and share. I think this is important.
Okay, well, when we read about what's happening in Ethiopia here, mostly it sounds as though Abe and his government are essentially creating genocide against the Tigrayans. But when I send these articles to the friends we have in Ethiopia, they say all of that is lies, that what the news that we're getting is not what is happening, that they feel that it's our Western power, again, trying to interfere with what's happening there. And they're very, very adamant about it. And they've sent me many articles from a different perspective. So it's quite interesting.
But I think that Abe has, these are, as I understand it, Sharon, they're very supportive of Abe. And he recently sustained his control recently through an election. So he does seem to have the general support of the country. So we'll just have to see what happens. Economics and infrastructure. I'm always interested in how people build things. That on the left-hand side, right? That's a ruler. Can you see the little gradations there on the white stone? And that's how.
That's your right side. Right.
Oh, my right side. Sorry. Okay, the right side. Yeah. So that's a ruler. cut into that rock that the stonemasons used for measuring whatever it is that they were doing. And then I just thought that the cuts on the left-hand side there, how they joined those corner blocks and created those lateral lines and the stone. I just thought that was pretty amazing. This is a this is a bridge. That bridge was first, it's called a Portuguese bridge because I guess the Portuguese built it. Both of these are in the Nile River Valley. The one is on the way to, it's south of the Lake Tana. The suspension bridge, we were told was built with foreign support. We can't recall if it was Japan or Switzerland, but there's many things in Ethiopia that, many facilities that are built with, not so much with Ethiopian money, but with donations and grants from other countries. Okay, here we are in Lalibela. This is where the stone can be cut. These churches are literally cut from stone. They're not piled, it's not rock piled on top of each other.
They're part of the earth. They're part of the earth.
Yeah, they are the earth. But then except for that door, there's a door there on the left-hand side. That's pretty amazing. That right-hand side. I can't get that straight. I'm guessing it's probably from Lebanon, but whatever. See that? That middle one? Look at the one on the other side. The church is down. I mean, it's like gouged out of the earth. And I should say, why is all of this here? These Coptic churches. When the Muslims invaded Jerusalem and destroyed a large part of the Christian churches and establishment, King Lalibela wanted to recreate the center of Christianity in Lalibela. And so that's why all of these churches are here, to bring, and they were Coptic Christians, which Coptic means basically they just were, devotees of the original writings of the church. So I just thought that was pretty interesting, as do many people, I'm sure. A friend of ours who lives in Lalibela told us that he had, in fact, had to escape Lalibela in 2020 because the Tigrean army entered Lalibela. I don't know if they destroyed any of the architecture. It would have been, of course, a shame if they had, but you know, that's war, I guess, when I look at what we did to Iraq and the civilization.
Canoe told me that they did not destroy the churches, but they destroyed homes and built all the businesses. But he implied that they had not destroyed the churches. Right. That they killed a lot of people there.
We're in an airplane flying over the area. This is between Axum and between Lalibela and Addis Ababa. And this is a river that I know Bart Henderson and Cindy went down this river before the hydroelectric power was in. The dam was being built, but the dam was not yet operational. There are 8 major river basins in Ethiopia, and there are 14 major hydropower generating dams. Over the past decade, there's been an 11% increase in the gross domestic product of Ethiopia, and it's mostly because they've been able to generate electricity for development. The demand for electricity grows about 30% annually. They're very oriented towards a resilient green economy. They've got a strong governmental thrust for what they call climate resilient green economy to achieve middle income country status is what they want their people to be, middle income. Well, of course, they're going to do it with the help of the Chinese. And this is coming out of the airport in Addis Ababa and coming across a construction site. There it was a civilized construction to reveal our elegance. I thought that was pretty cool. On the other side there, those ceramic water pipes, they're awaiting a new government contract. There were Chinese workers, a Chinese company in this area to install these water lines, but they did not, they weren't very harmonious with the local people, who accused them of eating their dogs, and also said that the Chinese have no sense of humor, and the Ethiopians didn't like that. So
They also said they were building shabbily, and this is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is putting in many African countries. And what so far has happened is that some of the African countries then cannot pay for it, so then the Chinese take over the ports that they built.
this was as a billboard that we saw in the railroad station. So this is the Ethiopian Industrial Resolution a la China. There are 14 industrial parks all along the train corridor there. What's pretty interesting is that this was formed without a lot of planning for efficient connection to the resources of the land. So this, even though this is a plan for industrial revolution, meaning that all along this this corridor would be manufacturing plants for products, but yet the natural resources to create those products are somewhere else. They're not located there. So it's just sort of an interesting, unproven industrial revolution.
But it might also just be a route to the sea for the Chinese.
Could be.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, I want to go back. So public transportation, we're looking at a monorail on the larger pictures there. The smaller picture to the right, left is just the railroad station in Addis Ababa. And then that's just a little picture of the train.
And Deborah, that was one of my reasons for wanting to go. Remember, I wanted to ride the train.
Which was built to ride at 70 miles an hour, but this is the train to Harar. But because too many farmers would bring their cattle and sheep and camels across the tracks to be killed so that they could claim compensation, the train decided to move more slowly, and now it requires 7 hours. The train was built to get you from Addis Ababa to Harar in 3 hours. It's now a 7-hour ride.
And the train is going to Debra Schnabel. Remember, we had to take a tuk-tuk or something to Harar.
Right.
Goes to Debra Schnabel.
So the other fiasco, and there's lots of fiascos in countries that are developing like this, and they use the money from foreign countries such as China, the United States, or whatever. I forgot exactly why very, very few people use the overhead train, and partly it's because nobody provided an easy access to get train tickets. So they built this monorail train, in Addis Ababa that's supposed to haul hundreds of thousands of people to work every day, but you have to get your ticket like, a mile away from where the train is. And they didn't provide for ticket agency, at the train station itself. More transportation. The little Baja were pretty cute, where the driver sits in the front and 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people sit in the back, one chair. Then there's the minibuses. I really like that picture with the cart and a horse right next to a car. At somebody's house there. And then, of course, there's always the mule. They really could stack a lot of product on trucks. You see that central picture there on the bottom. That truck is carrying a lot of weight. Modern construction, they say if you see a crane in the sky building a size skyscraper, then that's Chinese money. If it's being built with eucalyptus trees, then it's local. And in the Chinese, the Ethiopian banks require you to, or require an individual to finance their first 2 floors. You have to build the first 2 floors, and then the banks will consider loaning you money for additional floors. These are the housing types, mostly in the northern country, as you can imagine, with all the Simeon Mountains, et cetera, and Aksum, the rocks. It's a lot of rock community. The middle ground, there is just mud over eucalyptus trees. By the way, eucalyptus is not indigenous to Ethiopia, but it's used everywhere. It's for everything. It was brought over by King Menelik, I think, in the late 1800s from Australia, and it's transplanted here because it grows very quickly and it's strong enough for construction. So yeah, the little pointy houses there are circular. The one there on the right, lower right, is also circular, but that's circular with made out of stone. On the far left there, the little red roofed houses, those are housing development. It's new. It's on the way to Harar. So it would be like middle-class housing, I guess. Sharon?
I think so. I agree with everything you said.
Okay. Okay. Making a living on the street. Oh my goodness. Children in Ethiopia, if you see them out on the street, they are working. They don't go home. They don't go home to dinner and go to bed. They are usually sleeping in a park, behind a church. They have their little hovel, whatever. They do not generally have a family. There's so many children that leave the countryside and come into Addis Ababa and earn a living from like 9 years old or less. Those little children over there, you see they have a scale. They, for 25 cents, you can weigh yourself and see how much you weigh. And of course I did that. You can have, now that's not a young man, he's probably sewn all of his life. The middleman there is just set up his sewing machine out on the street and he sews for people. They bring stuff by. My little friend there is selling lottery tickets for life. Yep, they sell anything they can. Tourism, that's like a 17-year-old young man who owns his own mule. He followed us around all through the Simeon Mountains, begging us to need a mule. I think we finally relented.
And eventually we did need a mule.
Yeah. And Gauch, he took us across Lake Tana. I just love the fact that he's got a Yamaha engine, just like me. And then the Scout, you cannot hike the Simeon Mountains alone. You must have a guide, and your guide will be carrying a gun.
No, you have a guide. You must have a guide. You must have a scout, and he carries the gun, and that's because of bandits.
That's what they say.
You remember our guide couldn't hardly speak English.
Right.
And you were trying to teach him poetry.
I was?
Yes.
I don't remember that. Okay, so it's a land of shopkeepers for sure. These are just street scenes. I'm sorry, that middle one is a little dark, but there's they're selling, beverages, Coca-Cola, pop, whatever. The other one is tea. And oh my goodness, the market. What a busy place the market was. I know that those sacks that are being brought to the market are full of, I believe that it is chili peppers. but I know it's a spice, but it could, anyway, I know it's a spice. The middle guy, of course, is a carpenter. I don't know exactly what he's building, but he's building something. And then the metal worker, they pound out sheet metal that they find and refabricate it. Women, I forgot what they are making. It's some kind of traditional banana concoction that everybody eats. That's what they're doing there in the market. The middle picture are people storing or inventorying plastic bottles. I guess you'd call it recycling. And then there's our people that have a mule for sale.
And notice the hairdos on the mule sellers, because that was a very typical hairdo that we saw on young and old people, and it's modeled after a famous soccer player.
Oh, yeah. Still in the Mercado, the man selling leather belts. That's our guide, Lungo. He was actually, he's more than a guide. He was our man, our agent, our travel agent. He was pretty cool. He came with us. He'd arrange everything and then he would come with us.
And the first thing he said to us when we arrived, he says, "You are not teenagers." I think he was quite shocked at our age when we met him at the hotel for the first time.
Right. So just selling food and packing stuff, working. This is in Harar. This is the camel market. It was a slow day. Our guides were really disappointed, actually, that they didn't have more camels there, but something was happening. These markets are hundreds of years old. These cows with the humps, these are an Ethiopian cow. The camels are brought in from Somalia and south and east of Ethiopia, but they're traded there. I thought it was pretty interesting that the cows, we were told the cows run about $300 to $400 US money.
And the camels cost a whole lot more than that, if I recall correctly.
I don't remember that, probably, but you get more out of a cow. I don't know. Anyway. And of course there's chat, and this is it's a market, an export all through the Mideast. You chew it and it's like, it's not marijuana, but it's some kind of a what do you call it? What? Hallucinogen? Yeah, but mild, I think. You know,
Very mild.
Everybody's chewing it. I tried it, but it didn't seem much to me. But anyway, our guide stopped and bought it while they were driving. Okay. So the industry is, or the market is dominated by Muslims. The main export of Ethiopia, though, still is coffee, oil, seeds, flowers, plants, and gems and metals make up 4% of Ethiopia's exports. Wheat and teff. Teff is the main grain in Ethiopia. It's the basis of injera. That's the spongy bread cake that you'll be seeing pictures of. It's eaten at every meal. Yeah. Here we are, Sharon. You can talk about Mogus. There's Lungo with his leather jacket and his cell phone, and he was with us almost everywhere. Daoud, we met in Harar, and Mogus and Canoe. And Sharon, if you'd like to talk about their life stories.
Okay, so
2 years.
Mogus in the red shirt, you know, he wanted to leave Ethiopia because, you know, there was nothing for him to do there. I want to say that pretty much all of these men are very intelligent. They speak multiple languages, but they can barely make a living. And unlike Mogus in the red shirt, Canoe in the blue shirt wants to remain in Ethiopia. And when the Tigrayans came into before the Tigrayans even came in, the army tried to re-enlist him. He had already served. And when he said no, they put him in jail, and he had to give up all of his wife had to give all the money they had to get him out of jail. And then when the Tigrayans came into Lalibela, he and his young son had to leave because they were killing all of the males and of that age. And so he walked all the way to Bahir Dar and stayed there with his son for quite a while, and has twice returned to Lalibela. And I must say, I'm concerned about him now because I have not heard from him for 2 weeks, even though I keep asking if he's okay. So I don't know what's happening with him right now. But their house was destroyed in Lalibela, and everything is very, very bad for him. Whereas Mogus is married to a woman from France and now lives in Paris. And she wants to be a reporter in Ethiopia. So she came back with him to Ethiopia last month to report. But I don't think they're going to stay there.
Yes.
And Longo, who was the brains for our whole trip, and I would like to say that if ever you want to travel any place, I think the best way to do is to find a local guide. And Longo got us into everything and took us places we would never have been able to go without him. And he is now in dire straits. He's lost his business. His mom died right before the Civil War broke out, and he was living on the streets the last I heard.
They're beautiful people, though.
Mm-hmm.
Their teeth, they have perfect teeth. They know it too. And the middle guy, I think it's Kimbrough, Joseph, and Rahel.
And the middle one we knew as the fake Rastafarian, because he also wanted to get out of Ethiopia. And he thought that women were more attracted to people that looks like that were Rastafarian. And it worked, because he is now in Holland with a Dutch woman.
I think that they have a sense of humor. They're very highly intelligent, playful, artistic, and very tribal. We were lucky to, one of the final days that we were there, just catch this big parade in Necklace Square, and each one of these pictures denotes a tribal member in their tribal colors and fabrics and patterns. And you'll see up in the corner there on the right-hand side, that's Abe. And that's he's giving a speech in his tribal colors, and you can see all of the people sitting there behind him in their tribal garb. So, I mean, you wouldn't see people like walking around in the streets, like, in their tribal garb, but, they would do it for festivals and holidays and that sort of thing. And then that was just a darling little girl that Sharon befriended on the train. And she had some strong ideas about what she was doing.
She was so bright, and she really befriended me. She was very afraid, but she was so interested in practicing her English that she finally got up her courage to come and sit by me. And then we hung together the rest of the time, and she helped us when we got to Deir Dawa. She has her whole life mapped out.
So would you like to tell the story of Joseph?
Joseph, we met on the streets of Addis Ababa when Lungo stopped the van and Joseph jumped in, because it turns out that Lungo is a great guide, but he says he just can't do finances and numbers. And so somehow he rounded up Joseph, who is an accountant. And so he was trying to figure out all this paperwork. And then when we went to Deir Dawa, just Debra and I went on the train up by ourselves, and Lungo says there's going to be a surprise for you when you get there. And the surprise was Joseph. He had hired Joseph to meet us in Deir Dawa and take us to Hara and be our guide. And then we loved this guy so much because he was so kind and so good. And we offered he never asked. Many people asked you to sponsor them in Ethiopia, I think, because there's some great stories, like in Lalibela, a little boy was, a friend from someplace built him a hotel. And so those stories go around. And so everybody thinks that people from other countries are very rich. So you're asked many times to support them to do something. Joseph never asked us, but we decided that we would like to pay for him to go to driver's school, which we did. He did have to ask us to cover the bribe that he had to pay in order to get the license. And now we helped him buy this hat. This is a little government house that he just got, what, 2 weeks ago, Deborah? And you can
Not long
see,
ago.
it's not long ago, and you can see that, and he is so thrilled with it, but you can see that it's hardly bigger than he is.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's like the size of an Adco trailer cut into 4. And
Or
he
maybe
paid.
8, I've decided, maybe 8, I think.
Okay. So there he is at the door of the space. And then here he is with all of his worldly possessions and living there. And this is his kitchen, which is in one corner of this little room. And he is happy.
He's
Okay.
very happy.
He's very happy.
And he
because-
shares a toilet with 4 other families.
It's unbelievable how people live. And I would never have guessed that when Joseph first jumped into the bus with us. I would never have guessed that he had nowhere to sleep, nowhere to eat. Like for all of his years, he's happy. He has a place that knows that he can go to. It's just unbelievable. So most of the people, including Joseph, are strongly Orthodox Christian. This was in Lalibela that we met that priest. They do stand around for their pictures and alms and that sort of thing. The iconography is really, really interesting. A lot of it was destroyed by the Marxists in 1974. And so the new stuff mimics the old, but of course the colors are a lot brighter and they're really replicas. So here on the right-hand side is the apparent home of the Ark of the Covenant. Coptic Christians truly believe that the Ark of the Covenant is here in Lalibela. Huge. Okay. This very socially aware. These are just posters on the streets. One of them to stop the clitorectomies that were practiced in Africa. Girls advocating for condoms. It's in the Amharic region. So Sharon has a story about condoms, about how the education.
How not to tell people about condoms.
Right.
So Lungo, our guide, who has done pretty much everything, and he's a pretty young guy, I can't remember how old. He came to Addis Ababa and lived on the streets and polished shoes for many years. But one of his many jobs is he was a health educator, and he would go to the villages and demonstrate, the value and the use of condoms. And then he would return later just to see how things are going. And when he went, the practice was, I don't think he was the one that was actually doing it, but someone was demonstrating putting on a condom on a stick. And so he said when he went back, I don't know if it was weeks or months later, but everybody had their condoms on sticks and they were just kind of parading around with them.
Okay, what did we eat? That's injera. The woman there, everybody has a injera griddle. I think I didn't point that out in Joseph's picture, but I think in the kitchen you saw that little injera griddle. It's made of teff, as I said, and it's just a huge, big pancake, spongy pancake that gets folded up, and you rip it off the injera and soup up the stuff you want to eat. The middle one there is a fasting day. There's no meat on that middle one. The other one on this side has some kind of meat and vegetables. We bought bananas, of course. But as you can see, everybody eats together. It was not uncommon for us to be sitting there eating, and somebody who knew Lungo or whoever we were sitting with would come and sit down and just start eating. And that was so common. And so food is always shared, and you can see, you just, I don't know, you wash your hands, there's always a washroom, and then you eat with your fingers. The middle picture there is called tips. It's little pieces of fatty meat that are cooked hard, like a barbecue. And then I just thought that, and beer was very big in Ethiopia. And I'm not tipsy. The glasses really are, though. You see them?
I would like to talk about this lower picture, because those
Okay.
three men, you see Lungo in the back with the sunglasses on. He's a very cool dude. And then he just invited these three men. He knew them. They all live on the street and all are looking to take, they try to act as guides, but they don't have licenses, so they can get in big trouble if they get caught. But that's how they live. Most of them have been to the university. And this is just an example of this time they were invited to the table. But like Deborah said, sometimes we'd be sitting and then people would just come by and just, I learned you have to eat your food faster. You're not going to get it.
These are just pictures of different places where we slept. The far one there is a spa. They call it a spa. Bahadar with the netting for the mosquitoes. This was in Harar, the one with all of the kettles and plates and stuff on the wall. It is a guest house. I mean, that's built to be a guest house. And I guess it has a lot of traditional meaning, but it was pretty cool. And then there's a toilet.
A very typical toilet, even in a fancy restaurant, that's a typical toilet.
Mm-hmm. And these are just selected shots. That man there is henned. You see that he has his hair henned.
Which Naya, I asked Nayud about that again, and that's like a Muslim, something that you're following it's just a men's thing, and it's a men's society that is following the Prophet Muhammad, and that's how they denote themselves.
And the little monkeys like to come down onto the road. We were really lucky. I thought we came upon a wedding, and we were invited to come into the place where the mothers were making food and festivities and stuff. And this is the bride. It's very cool. Whoops. I'm sorry for the darkness of that middle one, but we were invited into the home. Remember, do I recognize this is Gaush? I think his name was our guide that on Lake Tana. He took us to an island where his mother lived, and we had lunch with them. And this other picture is the saffron robes of a priest. That was in, I think, Lalibela. With the beautiful colors, lots of religion floating around. Oh, talking about religion, that middle picture there are the corpses and mummies of Syrian pilgrims, their bones. Lots of Syrians would come into the Coptic churches of Ethiopia in the 1700s. And I don't know why they died, but their bones just got, put in these hewn walls. Remember, we're in Lalibela where things are dug out of the rocks. And so there's a lot of crevices and holding places and storage that you would find. This is Joseph with the darling little girl. I think that was kind of what captured us with Joseph. He was just so sweet. You see, he's wearing a little cross there too. And this guide over here on the left-hand side, you'll note that he has a little knit cap with the word Alaska. Where he got it, I have no idea. These are just selected shots. Sharon commented about the hairdo on those guys. I just thought that picture was pretty cool, where you could, choose your style. And then on the other side, I know it's a little dark, but just the juxtaposition of this woman, obviously in traditional garb, and walking past a shop in a market where all of the mannequins are these white English women. It just struck, and not as chubby as she was. Oh yeah, the two outer pictures are from Harar. Bones that were left for the hyenas. If you go to Harar, take earplugs. because there are hyenas that live outside the city gates, and they are constantly all night long howling. I had a hard time sleeping there. Sharon went, this is a big thing in Harar for tourists to go feed the hyenas. I had no interest in that, but
Well, I
Sharon,
didn't either. I didn't either, but our, Nayud and Joseph said we just couldn't miss it. So we went.
right.
And like a fool, I let that hyena walk up my back to get food.
Right. So we drove out to this place in the middle of the night, where this guy was feeding the hyenas, and we got to do that. The reason I have the picture of that padlock there was I want to share with you that I only saw 3 different things that were like made in America, the United States. One of them were these padlocks. The other was Coca-Cola. And I did see 3 Ford S-150s, but there's not a lot of American products. Ethiopian hospitality, but forget the Coca-Cola, but the reeds were set out in front of commercial establishments, especially this is a restaurant or an open area for convening people. And that was done, I think, on a daily basis.
And I asked Nayud about that because I couldn't remember why that was there. And he said it was originally something that was done by the Orthodox Christians, and that plant is called ketlama, which I'm not familiar with that plant.
Okay. And then, of course, it's all about the children. Everything in Ethiopia is about the children. It's always about the children. Just pictures of children, and there's a darling picture of little boys.
Oh, those little boys were coming from school, and they just wanted to practice their English with us, and weren't they just as cute as they could be?
Right. Okay, so that, I think we made it through in, oh, wow, an hour and 15 minutes. That was 70 slides and over 200 pictures. So I don't know if we have, if there are questions, I don't quite know how to manage that. Oh, can people, oh, okay, great. If you have any kind of questions or want to return to a picture, I hope I could figure that out. Yeah, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
Thank you for that talk. I have lots of questions, but I'll just ask one or two, and give other people a chance. So, we have an adopted daughter from China, and when we were trying to figure out what country to adopt our child to be from, we heard that children from Ethiopia who had been orphaned because their parents had died from AIDS, but the children were very adaptable and pretty happy and did really well. And so listening to you talk about how people are happy there and they make do and they're adaptable, do you have any ideas of why? It's so many different cultures there. It's hard for me to figure out why the kids from there and the people there seem to be able to make do under what we would consider to be pretty horrible situations often. Any ideas?
I think they're resilient. They're extremely resilient, but I know that the people we know are under a whole lot of stress as far as, how are they going to get their next meal? And I frankly don't know how it happens, but I do know that all the people that we met that were on the street, they looked like they had the best apartment in the world, because when they'd hop into our van or come join us for food, they were so clean and neat. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that, except there's just bred throughout the culture a sense of survival. And you're going to survive, and you figure out how you're going to do that. And boy, I didn't see much blaming or victimization or any kind of attitude. I mean, yes, there were beggars, and yes, there were people who were more disadvantaged, but I don't know, something within the country just allows everyone to figure that they have they're the masters of their own destiny. I guess.
Well, I do know that Canoe, who we met in Lalabella, he was pretty angry at his parents because they had so many children. And I think he came
Oh,
from
yeah.
a family of 12 children, and all of them had to leave when they were very young because they could not even be fed by their parents. And he thought that was irresponsible.
Yeah.
That brings me to my second question, then I'll give other people a chance, is, did you, when you saw all these people living on the streets, were they, I mean, all your pictures, they look really healthy and I don't know that that's, I mean, if that's, were they healthy? I mean, did people look downtrodden and beaten up and it doesn't sound like what you're describing, but.
I don't think so. I mean, everyone looked healthy to me. Not,
I mean, the
not
people-
everyone,
Not
But-
everyone. Yes, some
no,
people
but
did.
right.
Some people did look really kind of just beat down by life, and you could tell they hadn't had enough to eat. But one thing that Lungo and Canoe, you know, they invite people in, and when we would leave restaurants, if we had excess food, Lungo would package it up and just give it to someone on the street, you know. Whereas in America, people have to go through dumpsters to get food. Pretty much in Ethiopia, you know, the restaurants and everything set out the food neatly for that's left over for people to eat if they have no place else to eat.
And I don't want to make it sound real rosy, of course. I mean, human beings are what they are. And I remember there was a town that we were in, and there was a German couple sitting next to us, and they had witnessed a, boy, what was it? It wasn't a child who was abandoned. Do you remember that, Sharon? And they arranged to
That was
adopt a child. Yeah, there was something.
Yeah.
And there are people who are addicted to chat. And so there is neglect of children. Yeah, and probably domestic violence.
And then we did see that one scene in Addis where I think a young, well, I think maybe he was a teenager, and apparently he had stolen something or done something. And the police came and other people came, and literally they were beating him in the street.
Glad I don't remember that.
No.
Yeah, this is Don Bowling. I have a question.
Hi, Don.
Yeah, I'd like to address this to Sharon. You said that you had been in touch with people in Ethiopia. I had a cousin who was a university professor in Tigray province. He lives in Germany. And when the latest phase of the war broke out, all the professors had to leave and go back to Europe. I was wondering, the people that you communicate with, are any of them from Tigray, or are they from the other side? In that
They are from the other side, and at least two of them have almost like this really, it almost seems like a hatred. You know, their view is that when the Tigrayans were in power, that they abused people. And there doesn't seem to be much love for them. Whereas I was reading a book written by Robert D. Kaplan in the 1980s, and he spent a lot of time reporting from there for the Atlantic magazine. And he was just impressed with how the Tigrayans treated their fallen soldiers and their citizens, that they fed them, they took care of them, they nursed them when they were ill. Whereas he said that the people on the other side were just leaving their wounded in the field. So, you know, I came from seeing the Tigrayans as being good people, and my friends tell me, no, they're not. So why did they have to leave, the professors, for fear of their life because of being in Tigray?
Well, at the time that my cousin left, Tigray had been invaded by the government troops. And one lady that I talked to in Seattle, who was pushing wheelchairs at the airport, was from Tigray, and she told me that she had to hide her boys because when the government troops came in, they were either forcing young men to join the army on their side or killing them. And she said that her family lived in constant fear from the government side. Ironically, the fellow that's the dictator or leader of the entire country is from Tigray.
No, he's from Oromo. He's in Oromo.
Abe. Abe is,
Abe is in Oromo.
but prior to that, it was Tigray
Yes, the Tigrayans were in power for a long time.
for decades.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I haven't kept up on that particular mix. The guy that was given the Nobel Peace Prize,
Yeah.
Abe.
I thought he was from Tigray.
No, he is the one that called them, what did he recently publicly called them scum and they were going to be wiped out, something like that.
Yeah, well, that's concurrent with the what I'd heard from the people from Tigray, that they were definitely afraid of being wiped out.
Yeah.
So,
And that's what we're reading, but the friends that we know that are not Tigrayan are saying the opposite and sending news reports showing the opposite. So, it's just hard to know what's really happening. I'm sure it's that no side is perfect, that each side is doing horrible things to the other.
yeah, I lost track of it about the time that the Tigrayan army forced the National Army out and started invading other parts of Ethiopia.
Yes, well, now the Tigrayans have been pushed back into Mekelle and they don't have much ground now. And now supposedly they're starving to death. But only recently, in the past couple of days, I think, supposedly aid is supposed to be allowed in because Abe wasn't even allowing aid into the area.
Now, how is the United States involved in this? I'm surprised at the number of Ethiopian immigrants in the Seattle area. And usually when we have immigrants from a foreign country in large numbers, it's because the United States got involved in a situation where people we were supporting were losing and we had to bring them here to protect them.
I don't know, but like you, ever since we've been to Ethiopia, I keep meeting people from Ethiopia. So, I didn't realize there were so many Ethiopians in the country. And I don't know how. I think that many very, very bright Ethiopians, they have no options in Ethiopia. So they try to come someplace, and the United States is just one of the places they come.
And you're right, Seattle is a place where many Ethiopians have landed.
Because Deborah, remember the man who, I think, didn't he own the Seattle
The cinema,
company?
right?
Yeah,
The cinema.
and what he did, he worked as an interpreter in
No, that's a
Florida.
different man, but yes, I met a man in a restaurant who was, spoke English perfectly, but he was obviously, from the area. And he had, he was living in the Seattle area, and his job, his livelihood was as an interpreter for Ethiopians in court of law in Seattle, which, is kind of discouraging. I mean, people come and end up in dire straits and need legal advice or legal support. And so anyway, there's an Ethiopian there who translates for them.
Yeah, the people I had conversations with were from two places. Well, the people who push wheelchairs in the airports, many of them are from Ethiopia. One of them was from Eritrea. And then the fellow driving the town car to take us to the Virginia Mason Hospital was also Ethiopian, and his family owned a town car business. He told us that his family had been in Seattle for the last 30 years. But some of the other people, one of the lady that was pushing the wheelchair that was from Tigray, had only been there for a couple of years.
And I know here in the desert, I encountered a nurse at the hospital from Ethiopia.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about the ladies that were pushing the wheelchairs is that they were all wearing these Orthodox crosses.
Right. They certainly are. But people come into America and they find a place and start to build up from there if they can, if we don't hold them back. I don't want to just, everyone has their story, and we have to be respectful of that. And we have a library that we're very grateful right now that we've had people who are allow us to be here, but we do have to move on. So I'd like to know if there's any questions. I can be asked at any time. You can email me if you have any questions or anything you'd like to know. Is there somebody on chat?
It looks like we got at least one that someone would have typed in there. There you are on the screen.
I lost.
Went the wrong way.
Okay. I don't know. Well, if somebody wrote something in the
Oh,
chat.
okay. So, okay, I'm seeing it. Someone wants to know, how long was your trip? Oh,
3 weeks.
Dennis, I have my calendar right here.
Oh,
We left on November the 13th and we returned on December the 11th, only because Deborah had to be back for some meeting. I would have stayed longer if that were possible.
I would have stayed longer too. I loved Ethiopia. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful books written about Ethiopia. And I don't know, maybe Parker will go there someday looking for gold. Solomon's Mines.
English is not the main language. I learned of several Amharic phrases, but when you go to Oroma, then they're speaking Oroma. A lot of people do speak English too, but not, by far not all of them. Just the people, many of the people we encountered spoke at least some English.
Well, thank you guys. I know it took
Thank
a lot
you.
of time to put this together, and I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I'm fascinated. I mean, obviously your trip there has really impacted you both. You're still keeping in touch with people. You guys are both incredibly knowledgeable about the history of Ethiopia. Most of us go someplace and we have fun and we don't necessarily spend lots of time learning about it. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and
Well, thank you for wanting to know more.
And thank you for all your technical help. I mean, we're kind of like idiots when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Thanks, Sharon.
Well, I am.
Yeah, but
Okay.
You're braver than we are.
All right, thank you, everyone. I hope you
Okay.
enjoyed it, and I'll
Bye-bye.
see you around.
Bye-bye.
Let's close it off.
So it's real funny when I first signed on. What do I do?
Yep, and we will, we want to hit the stop share, and it'll get recorded, and sometime in the next 48 hours, I will have it up on the library website.
Cool. I hope we didn't offend anyone.
Aye.
Well, while I was talking, yeah, I mean, to know that it's on YouTube and our friends in